want to be able to just give encouragement to the people that are coming in to just go further with God, because that's what people did for us.
Brother Gravely, this came to my mind while you were talking. Brother Gravely always says, expect nothing but appreciate everything. Expect nothing but appreciate everything. And I appreciate what God's let us do and still letting us do. And I guess, like you said, Mama, just getting to the people pouring into you, it's getting to, it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. And now getting to be on this, the blessing, the giving side, more so, it's a great blessing. Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Chris Hewett again with you today for the Hewett Family Podcast, episode number 15. And this one's going to be exciting. I've got my favorite person in the world, my beautiful wife, Miss Chloé, with us. And I'm glad to have her back on the podcast today. It tends to be that the best videos we have is when she's on here. And we're celebrating the day that this airs. February the 4th is 1 year since we've been I've been the pastor of Ridge Road Baptist Church in Hiram, Georgia, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you will, go ahead and like the video, share it, and subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope you're enjoying the content that we're putting out. We've always been asked. So we were in evangelism for 13 years. We've been married 12 years, but I was already in evangelism for a year before we got married, and we've always been asked the question, do you think you'll ever pastor your dad's church? For those of you that don't know, my dad pastored here at Ridge Road Baptist Church in Hiram for 23 years, and I was his youth pastor while I was in my 20s, my early 20s. And then, of course, I went into evangelism. Miss Chloé and I met. We got married. And it's just seemed like everywhere we've kind of always went, it's always the question's always been asked, well, do you think you will ever pastor where your dad was at, or where your dad's at? And we would always say no. We were very content and happy in what we were doing. But it was December of 2022, and nothing was wrong. We were booked out 2 solid years. We loved evangelism. There were physical demands from evangelism that I don't believe is the same as pastoring. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
The physical, there was some Saturdays we would spend, 10, 12 hours on the road. We did missions evangelism, so we've been in 24 different countries. We've been all over the country here. And so there was a physical demand, but we were happy. We live in a camper. Jesus loving hippies is what I've always said. And December 22, God just began to work in my heart about some things, and didn't know it, but He was working on her heart as well. Mm-hmm. Tell a little bit about that, Mama.
Yeah, so I would just be laying in bed at night and thinking about Ridge Road and thinking that that's where we're supposed to be. And obviously we're in evangelism, and I know that he follows the Lord, and I was just, trusting, that he's doing the right thing. And I just couldn't get it off my mind, though, that we're going to be there. We're going to end up there. And I don't remember who brought it up first, but we started talking to each other about it.
I don't remember either. And
the other one was already praying about it. So
I didn't know she was praying about it, and I guess she didn't know I was praying about it. But that same, we would take some downtime in December, anyways, and we were in my hometown of Dallas, so we were around Ridge Road. But I don't even think that was the purpose or the point, because I was still preaching off on Sundays at different places, and a lot of times when we would be off of the road, we would park here and then drive to our home church, Bible Baptist Church in Rossville, Georgia. And it wasn't like that anybody was pushing us into it. it just all of a sudden God burned this place in my heart, and then I, again, like she said, we started talking about it. We got a over that next year, we got a piece of paper, and I guess you still got it, I think. And we would just write ideas down that we would like to see, things that we'd like to see God do. And but it was amazing. So my dad wasn't talking about retiring it at this time or anything like that. And so I went into January of 23 just really praying, and God began to keep me up at night. We would sit up at night and talk about the church. And I was going trout fishing when my dad, I believe it was January 23, we were riding up through the North Georgia mountains, and he just out of the blue looked at me and he said, I've been praying about retiring. And I'm like, what in the world? And I couldn't wait to get home and tell her about it. But at the same time, I didn't have liberty from the Lord to just open up a conversation with my dad about what God had put in my heart. I was trying to be very sensitive to the Lord on all that. So the year rolled on, and at that same time, January of that year, Ezra developed a very large hernia in his lower abdomen. And so we ended up, off the road 2 months?
Something like
so we were around here. We got to see some people saved through evangelism around here, and we started doing Friday night discipleship nights, which still to this day some of my favorite things, favorite time of my life ever. But we started discipling Miss Leah and Brother Trent, Miss Savannah, and then wasn't long until some of the young people here at the church jumped in, and then by the end of 23, my sister and her family had jumped in, and some other folks, and so we were having a pretty good crowd of folks. We were getting to disciple when we were not on the road. So anytime we were coming back to the Dallas area, we would Dallas, Georgia, for those of you watching, we would just give everybody a heads up, and we would have a discipleship night, and it was just wonderful. Then December 23, my dad had asked me to teach the Christ Life Man. So the Christ Life Man is the discipleship method that God has given us, and I love using it. I love teaching it. Matter of fact, Tuesday night we'll be going through another cycle with a brand new group of folks. But my dad asked me in December 23 to take all the Wednesday nights and teach the Christ Life Man to the church here at Ridge Road Baptist Church. And we were just ecstatic. We didn't know what all God was doing, but that burden, I'll let her tell a little bit. It's like, we enjoyed doing what we were doing, but we knew we needed to be here. I mean, she would get on the phone and be like, what are y'all doing? How did it go?
How did church go?
Yeah, how did church go? And it's like our heart was already here. And that's amazing how God does that, because, again, we were so thankful and happy in evangelism and what God was doing and is doing. But it was just like God gave us a heart for this place. And like we were talking about, she would be on the phone with my sister. I would be on the phone with Brother Trent or Brother Chad. And we would be asking people, like, how did it go today? What was it like today? All of these things. So December rolled around. We got through the Christ Life Man. And that last Wednesday night, my dad rode home with us, and we took him home that night, and we started talking about what his future. At that time, there was a large church in the Carolinas that was asking me to move Who Will Go up under their ministry and build a camp, which is something that's been on my heart for years, is to build a actual camp for Who Will Go and build a missions training school. They were asking us to come there. There was a church about 40 minutes from here that was looking at us at pastoring, and there was another church in the Carolinas that was asking us if we'd come and pastor. And so all of that was happening at the same time, and we didn't want to make a wrong decision because we had all these open doors, but the whole time all we could think about was this place, was Ridge Road. And so we just laid that out for my dad. And I'm like, Daddy, what is your future? I don't want to go bury up somewhere for 3 years and give my life to a place, and then knowing I'm supposed to be here, and then you leave and have to change and move. And so he took I think it was like 26 days and prayed over it. It was maybe not even that much.
It was going to be a month.
It was going to be a month. It ended up being less than that. He called me, I believe it was January. I was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, preaching for my friend, Brother Scott Pennell. It was January the 14th. And I actually slept with my watch on that night. I normally don't do that. And it was 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock Georgia time, 5 o'clock there where I was at. And it was my dad. And, you know, nobody calls you with good news at 5 o'clock in the morning. It scared me to death. And my dad said, son, I'm done. I said, what? He said, I was praying this morning, and the Lord said it's time. And so it was just, I couldn't wait to wake her up and tell her. But he said, I'm resigning next Sunday. He said, don't tell anybody in the church. He said, I want to tell all the men and let them all know. He said, but I'm going to resign next Sunday. And he said, if you will, I want you to cancel your meeting and be there all day Sunday. He said, I want to recommend you to the church as interim. And then he said, I'm going to recommend that they vote on you as pastor. And so my dad didn't force me into the church. Nope, nothing like that. But I stepped in as interim for 2 weeks, and by the constitution of the church, there needed to be a 2-week period where you allow everybody to know that there's going to be a vote. And on February the 4th, God saw fit to let us be voted in 100% at the Ridge Road Baptist Church in Hiram, Georgia. And here we are a year later, and it's been wonderful. So before we get into the questions, because we got some cool questions, what are some thoughts of that year, of that waiting, and that you have, Mama?
I just remember it felt like forever because we knew this is where we were supposed to be, but we just tried to be patient and wait on the Lord. And, you know, looking back, it doesn't seem so long, but when you're in the middle of it, you know, especially after he said, let me pray about it for a month, each day felt like 12.
Yeah.
So it was just really exciting just to know that you're walking in the path that God has for you, and just seeing him open the doors and watching him do that. It was really fun. It
was great, and it helped that we were able to get to minister so much here during that year when we weren't here, if that makes sense, so when we were not officially here. But so we over the last year, it's just been wonderful. Last year, God saved. We took the church with 46 people that Sunday morning. The last Sunday morning, we had 92 people, so exactly double of what we started with. And and we give God all the glory. But the people have just took the vision of working hard, being obedient, and trusting God, right? And y'all are going to laugh at me. My motto is lean on God like a Calvinist and work like a Jehovah's Witness. And I'll probably have somebody crucify me in the comments over that. But it's the truth. Lean on God like it all depends on him, and work like it all depends on us. And the people have just really taken to that. And last year, God let us see 34 people make professions of faith, 30 people baptized. Discipleship has just absolutely exploded. We've had up to 70 people in in-home discipleship. Our midweek service, we moved it to Thursdays so we could have a dedicated in-home discipleship night on Tuesday nights. And discipleship's not a class, it's a life. So they're sitting around the table studying topics that they're all dealing with, and we are too. We're trying to help people, and we're teaching them how to teach them how to teach them. On Saturdays, we do what's called a Bible tent. We still do door tagging, what I call door tagging or door knocking, whatever you want to call it. But we've really had this just amazing time with what we call Bible tents, where we pop a tent up on a corner in our town, and we put signs up. We got banners, and I'll drop some pictures on the video. But we have banners and signs, and it says free Bibles or Jesus saves and different scripture verses. And this past Saturday, we had a Bible tent. We had 30 of our people there. We had 22 people. That was a record for us. And we only stay out there an hour. We had 22 people come by in an hour's time to the Bible tent. Gave out 19 Bibles and English Bibles, which is a record for us, and 3 Spanish Bibles. It's just amazing because when you're knocking on somebody's door, there's kind of a wall up. They want to know if you're a Jehovah's Witness. They want to know if you're a Mormon, or they want to, why are you in my property? But when they're coming up to you like that in an open, market forum type like that, it's just been wonderful. And our people have really taken off with that. Matter of fact, Lord willing, our next Saturday we have Bible tent. We're going to have 2 separate ones in 2 different towns. And our goal is there's 5 pretty larger towns around our church within, what would you say, 20, 30 minutes. And we want to have a Bible tent in each one of those towns every time we do a Bible tent. Something else we're starting is we're calling our Samaria ministry, Reseed the South, and the church is really getting behind this. And there's several towns within the Atlanta area that have no independent Baptist churches, so we're going to be starting Bible studies in coffee houses, doing Bible tents in those communities, doing door tagging, doing mail outs, having a Facebook geared towards the Bible study. And then we've got a group of people in their 20s that's going to be heading that up, and hopefully starting churches like that. Kennesaw, Georgia is going to be our first town. So all these things you can pray about. It's been a whirlwind. So we have some questions. I put out last week that we were going to do this episode, and thankfully people watched and listened, and they gave us some questions. So this was my question for Miss Chloé. And then I'm going to answer it myself as well. Mama, what was your favorite thing that happened last year as far as around the church?
My favorite thing I was thinking was probably Emmeline professing Christ.
Emmeline's our daughter, for those Emmeline is our daughter, just in case you don't know. But it happened the same week that we started. Mm-hmm. We got voted in. But I was in Louisiana, so Mama was here. I'll let her tell you.
So I was at home with the children, and I can't remember what I was doing, but she came into the room and she's like, "Mom, I'm not saved," and that was the first time that she had said it. So with such authority, I guess it was. I'm not sure, or something like that.
And she'd been asking questions for months.
A long time. And something else that we had never seemed to get past was her realizing she was a sinner. She had never really thought she was, I guess. And so that day she was like, "I'm a sinner." And so I was able to talk with her at home, and she prayed there in my room, and she said she was a sinner, and she trusted Christ, that he was the only one that could save
Amen.
her, and she put her faith in him that day. So that was my favorite thing. And it was really cool that she got baptized on her birthday. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, that was so fun. And it's kind of like, and some people called it confirmation, and I feel like we didn't necessarily need confirmation because of what God had been doing in our heart over a year. But it was kind of like confirmation. Within the first month, we had just a ton of folks saved. Mm-hmm. But our daughter, I think it was the day after they voted me in. I think. They didn't tell me till I got home. What do y'all think about that? They hid it from me until I got home. Yeah, so. She wanted to wait till I got home. But it was just a blessing. And like folks said, it was kind of like confirmation. My favorite thing was, so y'all don't know, some of y'all may not know who this is, but Grandma Penny. Grandma Penny is a lady in her late 80s that we have been praying for years. Her son is Brother Daniel Freed. Her grandson is Brother Samuel Freed. Many of y'all know our friends, the Freeds, with Hope of Israel Baptist Mission. And since Brother Daniel got saved, I think it was in 1973. He grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home, Orthodox Jews on both sides. He had been praying for his mother to get saved. And God just has given Miss Chloé and I just a unique relationship with her. And up until 2015, she had never been in any kind of Christian service other than a wedding. And she started coming to tent meetings. And then she started coming to Jubilee at Brother Gravely's. And then when we got here, she started coming pretty regular. Would you say probably once a month or something? Well, and that, she lives further away now. But that in July she came with Brother Samuel. She actually called and asked to come. So Brother Samuel and Miss Molly went and picked her up and brought her here. And that morning, man, it was just amazing. I was preaching the gospel according to Sarah. So I'm preaching through the book of Genesis on types of the gospel. And I was preaching the gospel according to Sarah. And it just seemed like I was able to deal with so much Judaism and so many things. I was dealing with Genesis 18, and a lot of times they don't want to believe, or Jews don't believe as a whole. Religious Jews don't believe that Jesus or God could take on bodily form. And in Genesis 18, it is a Christophanies. God takes on bodily form. And that day during the altar call, I could hear Brother Samuel was sitting there with his arm around his grandmother, and she's older, and she wasn't standing up during the altar call. And she leaned over into his ear and said, I think he's talking to me. And like everybody heard it. It was just great. It was so wonderful. And so as soon as service was over, there was other people that God had just greatly dealt with that day. And as soon as service was over, Grandma Penny just like took off outside. And I thought, man. And my way I work, my mode of operations, I actually sit on the altar after every service instead of standing at the back door and shaking hands, just so I can be available for people who God may be dealing with about something. Excuse me. And so I'm sitting on the altar and I'm dealing with other people. I can't even remember who else I was dealing with that day. I think we had other people saved that day. And all of a sudden, about 10 minutes after service, Grandma Penny comes walking back in, and she always wears sunglasses when she's around us or in church. And she came and sat down on the altar, and she said, I got some questions for you. And we walked through some questions. She's asking about, if she gets saved, is she going to have to quit being a Jew? And I said, no. I said, actually, you'll be more Jewish than you've ever been. And we talked about some answers, and she took her glasses off, and she's, always trying to put on a really good front to show how strong she was, And she took her sunglasses off, and she was crying, and she said, I'm ready to make Jesus my Savior. And it was just so wonderful. 87-year-old Jewish lady getting saved. And somebody we love and we've been praying for. And so, anyways, it was wonderful. I got some more questions. Now, these are from social media. This is one of our church members, Sister Patty Lovelace. Isn't that amazing? Patty Lovelace goes to our church. Some of you will be old enough to get that reference. Miss Patty is a great blessing to us and our family. She came back in last March, and she's just become such a great part of the church. She said, what is the most difficult adjustment you've had to make transitioning from being a traveling evangelist family, now she's being funny here, to being the patriarch and matriarch of a church body? And then she says affectionately, you better not say ministering to my family either, all right? And I got several laughing emojis. But Mama, what do you think's been the most difficult adjustment from evangelism to being the pastor and the pastor's family?
Probably there's more responsibilities, more irons in the fire. I felt like then we mostly just had to make sure that our family got from point A to point B, and we obviously had our normal like day-to-day things we had to do, but we had the services at night, and
we had a routine.
Yes. And that was what we did. We were in church every night, but we were together. That's what we did. And then now I do feel like there's more responsibilities. We're not in church every night, but when I'm here, I'm not just showing up anymore. There's a lot of things that need to be done. People you have to talk to, counseling, cleaning, just a lot of things. And trying to find the balance with church and the church family. You want to be there for them, and you want to, make sure everyone feels welcome, and you want to make sure everyone gets, the same amount of time. And we are also branching out into some business ventures, so that's a thing.
We'll do some videos on that.
Yeah.
It's all coming. Just be ready.
So those business opportunities, home life, we're still doing Who Will Go. And I guess that about covers it. Just, some things at home we're wanting to start doing as well. Yeah. Homeschooling, just your everyday thing. So I definitely feel like there's a lot going on. So that is something we're trying to figure out how to balance.
Our motto's always been, if we weren't given everything for the minister or for God, for doing serving Jesus, we're both goal driven people. Like, I don't even know why we have a dirty clothes hamper, because she never lets dirty clothes sit in the hamper. It's just great, but that's just how we are. She and I both are that way, and I feel like if people, oh, you'll burn out or this, that, and that. I have a bigger fear of becoming lazy than I do burning out. But that's crazy. We haven't shared our answers with each other. My answer to this is, I can't say that it was necessarily difficult for making that transition, because like we've already talked about in our story at the beginning, God had already moved my heart here, so very much. God had just, man, we wanted to be here. Not that we didn't enjoy the road, and we still enjoy the road. We still get to do some stuff on the road, but God had moved my heart here, so God changed my heart, and so that it wasn't necessarily difficult. But in just a technicality or application, learning to say no. With the ministry, with evangelism, I had just said yes a lot. Now God had changed our ministry very much to missions evangelism, so we were doing more overseas work. We were doing more with Who Will Go, as she mentioned. We were doing more evangelism and discipleship, teaching, training, conferences, things like that. So we had moved away from just the typical church revival circuit or the typical camp meeting circuit, and we were doing more of that kind of Book of Acts kind of stuff. But we, my biggest problem or transition issue was saying no. I laid my calendar out before the Lord at the beginning of the year last year, before we took the church, or when we took the church, and I just said, Lord, what do you want me to cancel? And I've never said that before. It's so contrary to my brain, because I've always asked God, God, please use me. God, please use me. And which He's still using me. It's just in a different aspect. But God using me had always been going off and preaching. So I had to learn to say no. And people, man, you pastors that may be listening that let me cancel on you or let me move things, I just want to say thank you. And the pastors that used us all these years, thank you. It's just amazing. You churches that supported us and still support Who Will Go. Many churches still support Who Will Go and the work going on there. So we bless the Lord for that. But learning to say no, and it's amazing what you said. I have to learn to say no now. There was a big meeting out in California that I got invited to the end of last month, and I so wanted to go, but I just had to say no. I needed to be here more for my family. I had been gone to 2 different meetings, one in Minnesota, one in Florida, in the month of January, and I just said, man, I got to say no to this, and God's helping me. But like she said, saying no to the unnecessary things and really giving our time to the necessary things, right? And now God's given us people that we've been able to train and to pour into and to disciple, and they're taking even more off of us. But we're the kind of people, like she just mentioned, with the business stuff and some homesteading stuff that we're working on, and we want to do videos for. Even though I'm handing more stuff off, we are goal driven, so we want to do more, and it's a cycle. But learning to say no to the less expedient things, I guess, would be my top one. You want to read the next question? Sister Aubrey's, I think, is the next one.
Okay, she asked, what has
Sister Aubrey Graham. She smiles all the time. She's got a great YouTube channel with a good singing on it. Check it out.
Nice plug there. She said, what has been your favorite experience about being a pastor and a pastor's wife?
My favorite, I'll go first. Well, I'll tell you this. My favorite thing as a pastor or a pastor's wife, which I'm not a pastor's wife, but my favorite thing as a pastor, and this is something I've always wanted to see, let's try biblical Christianity. Let's preach the Bible verse by verse. Let's expect more out of people than what we all have traditionally expected. Let's just see what God will do and how God can help people from a verse by verse Bible preaching standpoint. And that's to the same people every week. I just wanted to see what it would do. I remember what it did for the youth group when I was youth pastor, and I just wanted to see for myself what would it do if we just take God at His word, preach the Bible verse by verse, go after sinners, make disciples, and repeat it. And so we're getting to do that, and it's very satisfying. I'll just be honest, it's very satisfying. There is probably not a week that goes by preaching through the book of Genesis, story by story. Then Sunday night, last year, I preached through the book of Nehemiah, verse by verse, and then it ends up going into story by story. Then we just finished up last Thursday night the book of Galatians, literally verse by verse. And there's not a week that goes by that God doesn't deal with something going on in the church with the next verse. It's just amazing. Me and her will be praying over something, and I'll tell her, I'll start studying for the next message like on Thursday night or Sunday night, and I'll be like, you're just not going to believe this. You're not going to, just wait till you hear. And that's been so exciting, and just watching people become hungry for God, hungry for souls, hungry for the things of God. And that's been I hope that answered the question. That's been my favorite experience. What about you?
Yeah, similar. Just getting to invest in
She
people.
loves preaching the Bible verse by verse. No, I'm just
I like listening to it verse by verse. I actually had that down. In evangelism, there were these, I guess, just in a given period of time, just several really powerful messages. And he used to apologize for me having to hear that same message over and over. But it wasn't like I didn't enjoy that. And you always get something new, just like you do with your Bible when you hear it again. But I have been enjoying hearing the Bible verse by verse, so that's been fun, just kind of being in one place and getting to experience that. And just getting to invest in people and see people grow and watch God work in their lives. That has been really fun and encouraging. And I've enjoyed just getting to, I guess, build a family. When we were in evangelism, every church we would go to, it was so fun because you got to see your friends that you had not seen in a year. And it was just a really fun thing. But right now I feel like we're getting to be with a family.
Yep.
And I
build
really
ties
that
we loved and love Bible Baptist Church. We love
Yes.
Bible Baptist Church, and they were so great to us, and it was such a good place for our family to be, but we never got to be there. Literally, there were times where we would go 6 months because we were just so busy that we wouldn't get to go to our home church. And it was funny, every time we would go, just about, Brother Gravely would have us get up and sing, but he would almost have to reintroduce us to the church because there would be so many new people there that didn't know us. So I agree with that. So next question. This is from one of our newest church members, Sister Kim Pinnell. Her first question is, what's the biggest previous misconception that you had about pastoring? Go.
Well, I thought we would be less busy. But
I warned her. Just so you know, I warned her. Yeah.
it is a different kind of busy. Like you were saying, with driving through the night and driving a 12-hour stretch, packing up and unpacking, packing and unpacking. This is a different kind of busy, which we've always been told this all through the years. Pastors would talk with him, pastors' wives would talk with me when we would come in, and we would talk about that dynamic of, being on the road versus being stationary and being in the pastorate. And they always said, I couldn't do what you're doing. This is such a physical, it takes such a toll on you traveling all the time. And they would say, but it's different. The pastor has more mental,
emotional.
Yeah.
So a pastor we've always heard this, a pastor has more emotional and mental strain. The evangelist has more of a physical strain.
Yes, and I would agree with that. I'm not the pastor, but
she's not my co-pastor, just so you know.
Just I guess that was, I believed that, and I still do believe that, but I thought we're moving to the mental side now, that we wouldn't be physically as busy. And I feel like we are, but it's a different kind of busy.
We do you got to understand, for our whole marriage up until last year, we did not know what it was like to have 2 or 3 nights in a week where we could play cards, or we don't gamble, play Uno. That sounded awful, didn't it? Or take a walk in the evening and not be rushed. And we're not complaining, but that has been a great blessing. We just didn't know what that was. So we're catching up on Saturdays here.
Right.
So
yeah.
Anything else on that one? Because I want to answer it.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I'll say this, Miss Kim, or to everybody else, the biggest previous misconception. I had a pretty good idea because I grew up in a pastor's home. My dad and mom, the year I was born, he was already a youth pastor. Then we went from that church to the next church, which was so from Draketown to Cochran Ridge. My dad was youth pastor, or basically assistant there, for I think 12 years. And then he left Cochran Ridge, went basically directly here to Ridge Road. And so that's all I've ever known. So I've seen all these different facets of ministry. And I don't know that I had any misconceptions, but something I never could quite understand outside of the pastorate was why don't men pull the trigger on things quicker? And I guess what I mean by that is, why do men allow sin to fester, or issues to fester? Because not every issue is a sin. Not every sin's an issue, or you know what I'm saying. Every sin is an issue. But not every issue is a sin. That's what I was trying to say. And I couldn't understand why men let it go. And I'll say this, I'm not saying they should still at this point. But I remember earlier on, and man, I'm not trying to sound super spiritual or nothing with this. I like to go, we're sitting in my study right now, and I love coming up here every day. I try to come up here every day during the 5 days, middle days of the week. And I love to go during that day and spend time walking around the
Pews.
auditorium,
Yeah.
the sanctuary, and pray. And of course, you kind of, we're Baptists. We don't have assigned seats, but you better not get my seat, kind of. And people, I know where people sit. And I was praying over the pews, and there was an issue. There was a church discipline issue I knew I was going to have to take care of. And tied to that was a lady in her 70s and another lady, some family tied to the issue. And I just, as I was praying over that issue that I needed to deal with, and God, my heart just broke, because I really believed that if I dealt with that issue, I was going to lose these other two people. It was not their fault. It was not, they didn't do anything wrong. But I really believed, I was like, man, I feel like my heart just broke that day. Here I was shepherding. I'm trying to pastor. I'm trying to shepherd, and I'm trying to love people. But part of loving people is being that arm of church discipline. And it was a big issue. So God gave me grace that day. That next Sunday, I dealt with the issue, and sure enough, I've not seen those people since. And I even told her the other day, I said, I understand now why men don't pull the trigger. We should still pull the trigger. We should do it with grace. I want grace in my stand, and I want stand in my grace. But I understand the hurt. And here's the thing, if you don't pull the trigger, a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. And that the leaven will get all in the church. It'll ruin the whole lump. But it doesn't make that pulling the trigger any easier. So I don't want the bigger problems down the road. A man told my pastor years ago, Brother Gravely, our pastor, that when it's time to leave a church if you can no longer pull the trigger. But I'm afraid we live in a generation of nobody wanting to pull the trigger at all. And I understand why you don't want to, but I also understand the damage that'll be done if you don't. So I guess that would be my biggest misconception of why. Why don't you pull the trigger? I understand a little bit why, And now if your reason for not pulling the trigger is so you could keep people and have a bigger crowd, that's a horrible reason. And I'm not saying that I shouldn't pull the trigger, or that you shouldn't pull the trigger because of this. I guess you would call that sentiment, or the love for people, or the desire to keep people because you love them. But man, it's hard, but it's worth it if you're right in line with that Bible, and you should be in line with the Bible. There's times to pull the trigger. So I hope that makes sense. Miss Kim asked, let's see, are there any specific things you learned throughout your years of evangelism that have definitely impacted how you pastor? Do you want me to answer this first, and then you can tag on to this?
I think you should.
Because we talked about this question. She's not pastoring, but she's got some thoughts on this as a pastor's wife. And then the question continues. General concepts or specifics that explain prior experience is important. Why prior experience is important. So through evangelism, we kept a mental list of do's and don'ts. Man, this is going to get me in trouble. We would be in a church, and we would see somebody do something. We're like, oh, we don't ever need to do that. And then we would see things that churches were doing, and we were like, man, that's a great idea. You know, we went to some of the greatest churches in the world. I don't want to start naming because I'll forget churches, and I'll make somebody mad, and they'll send me an awful email, you know. But seriously, we got to go to some of the best churches in the world, and so we would keep a list of do's and don'ts, and we've implemented some of that here at the church, and it works. It's wonderful. I had a pastor tell me he was jealous over me with a godly jealousy before as we were coming into the pastorate, and he said it was because of my background. He said, "You've gotten to be an evangelist, and a biblical evangelist." He said, "You got to be a missionary of sorts." He said, "Now you're going to get to go into pastoring with that background," and it's been amazing. You know, I tell people, somebody was picking at me the other day, "Oh, Brother Chris," my missionary friends, because most of my friends are missionaries. You know, "Oh, Brother Chris is not a missionary anymore." I beg to differ. I believe I'm still a missionary. I'm just getting to be in one place and getting to be a missionary to Paulding County, Georgia, and I really haven't changed my mentality of work ethic or ministry. We're just doing it in one place now. It's wonderful, right? It's what we were doing in the tent ministry. It's what we were doing in evangelism. And then also, I think to answer this question, I would be amiss if I didn't mention that my prior experience or knowledge, just watching my pastor, Brother Gravely, when all of this was unfolding, he said, I want to have lunch with you. And so we met halfway one day, and this was before I actually officially became pastor. And he sat down with me for about 3 or 4 hours one day, and I call it pastor school. And he just started throwing out wisdom, and I've literally got the notebook in my pocket here where I wrote down the things he said, and I've accessed that. I've went back to it. I've read over it over and over again, and just watching my pastor go in and out amongst God's flock, and the way he is direct, he's thorough, he's very structured, but he never lets structure get in the way of letting God move, and man, just driven and working. And he told me this. He said always have something going on. He said whether it's a physical thing or a spiritual thing. He said whether it's painting the baseboards or going out and doing a mission trip. He said always have something coming up next, and he said it keeps that freshness. And Miss Kim, I hope that answers your question on that. But excuse me, those are the specific things I learned at watching other people, watching my pastor, and just being able to have this background has been absolutely wonderful. Getting to go in, and I've still got a lot to learn. I'm not an authority. I've still got a lot to learn. I'm still trying to learn, but those things have helped me greatly. Same question, Mama.
Yeah, so a lot of it that I'm, I guess, just going back and reminiscing about is just the hospitality that all the churches showed to us, and everyone was so nice and kind and wanted to make us feel welcome. And I mean, people would give us gift baskets and pay for hotel rooms or
buy us a
camper
car.
spots. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, love offerings. If we had something going on in the ministry, they prayed for us. And they they might do a special love offering for something we needed in the ministry, and it just was it was just heartwarming, I guess, just to know that so many people are praying for you and they believe in you and what you're doing. And so, one of the things that I've brought here from that is I want our guests to feel the same way. I want our missionaries to feel the same way. And I want our visitors and our members to feel the same way. And I want to be able to just give encouragement to the people that are coming in to just go further with God, because that's what people did for us.
We do understand the wearing of the road. We understand, raising your children. A lot of people get this long amount of time. They get 6 days a week to prepare to train your children for the day. Day and a half counting midweek service at church, and our children were raised in church. That's just what they knew, and so giving people a little grace and understanding. Brother Gravely, this came to my mind while you were talking. Brother Gravely always says, expect nothing but appreciate everything. Expect nothing but appreciate everything. And I appreciate what God's let us do and still letting us do. And I guess, like you said, Mama, just getting to the people pouring into you, it's getting to, it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. And now getting to get to be on the blessing, the giving side, more so. It's a great blessing. I guess I'm going to cry today. From a pastor's wife point of view, this question is not for me. From a pastor's wife's point of view, what's the best thing and the hardest thing about being married to the pastor? And do you have any advice for other pastors' wives?
So my favorite thing is, I am
being married to the pastor.
Being married to the pastor.
Just
yeah.
kidding.
Just to be your helpmeet, and that's what we were before we came here. But after
your first job.
Yes. Just getting to be on your team here. I like being on your team.
Yep.
So
I like her being on my team.
I like doing that together. It's just been really fun. The hardest part is probably the burden bearing, because you are close. You're a husband and a wife. Not everything. There's some things that he doesn't bring to me, and I appreciate that. But a lot of times I am involved because maybe there's a woman that needs counseling or something. So I'm in here for that. But just, you're going to bed with all these people's problems, and you care about them. You want everything to turn out well for them. You want them to live for the Lord. And so that's probably the hardest part, is helping carry that.
Our friend, Brother Chris Simpson, evangelist Chris Simpson, man, he's wide open as a case knife. Brother Chris told me years ago, he's been pastoring since he's been in evangelism for 2 years now, I think, or almost. Has it been 2 years?
I don't think so.
It's almost 2 years, I think. I can't remember. We both switched places about the same time, so it's probably been a little over a year. But he started pastoring when he was like 7, so he's got a lot of wisdom. We're the same age, but I asked him one time years ago, what's the hardest thing about pastoring? And without hesitation, he said, when you go to bed every night, he said, you go to bed with your burdens. He said, and at the time he was pastoring here in Georgia in our hometown, and had about 160 people in his church. He said, but when I go to bed at night, I have the burdens of 160 people on my heart. So that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Next question.
There was the advice.
I'm sorry, Mama. Advice.
It's okay. It kind of segues into the next one, but she asked, was there any advice for pastors' wives? One of the things that I've tried to do is just be an encourager to my husband and to the ladies in the church and the children, and to just, if you're encouraging, you're not tearing down. And we do not want to tear down the church in any way, or the brethren in any way. So I try to do that. That would be my advice. If you're encouraging, people are going to go forward.
Yep. And I'll say this: number one, she's wonderful, and God has given my wife, and those of you that know her, God, and I want to embarrass her here, God has given my wife this magnetism about her that women, even when we were in evangelism, women were just drawn to her. Not only is that, she's very pretty, as y'all can see. But I want to say this as far as pastors' wives. Always remember this, ladies. You are not the church's wife. You are the pastor's wife. And you notice what my wife said, and I didn't know her answer. She said that her first job is to be my helpmeet, and I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful for that, because if her first ministry is to me and to our children, and if she's not fulfilling that ministry, then I'm lacking, and it causes this disorder causes a bad dynamic in a marriage, in a ministry, in a home, in a church. And we're not perfect, but this is just good advice. That it's not original to us. This was advice given to us. She's not the church's wife. She's my wife, and she that is, the church is like third, fourth tier for her. And that's not a negative thing. That is a positive thing, because the more she pours into me, the more she pours into our children, into our home, the more effective we're going to get to be. So I don't just throw her out into the church all the time. When we first started pastoring, she doesn't necessarily like speaking or being out front. Now she spoke at ladies' meetings and stuff, but that's not her strong suit. And so I put her, knowing that, I put her in a Sunday school class, and I had her started leading the ladies' prayer room. And the reason I did that, and I've told her this, and man, she's grown in this, is I wanted her to be out in front of those ladies because she has something special. I wanted them to see that example. I wanted them to I guess, kind of get to see her heart, and I'm very thankful for that. So let's see, what's the next one? If you could go back in time, this is still Miss Kim. She had a bunch of good ones. If you could go back in time to 1 year ago, what advice would you give yourself about going into the pastorate? You go.
So this is the struggle bus for me. We got so excited talking about the church and coming, and we had that paper, and we all these ideas, and this is prideful, but I think I have some really good ideas. And
she does have good ideas. You shouldn't say it, but you do have good ideas. Go ahead.
And I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, when I should let those ideas be known, or I guess to answer the question, I need to not feel the need to share my opinion or my thoughts and ideas all the time. So that's something I'm trying to work on.
I just heard 1,000 husbands say, amen.
So, but because I do know you value my opinion.
She does.
I tend to just think you want it when maybe you don't.
We have, literally the end of our day, I sit there before we go to bed and I drink coffee and we talk about the day. And that's when I want, that's when we discuss things and I ask things. But she likes to throw them out sometimes when we're not having our conference.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Well, and at the end of the day, I don't want my words to sway your discernment. And
say that again for the ladies in the back. Say it again.
I do not want my words to sway my husband's discernment. So I'm trying to learn that there might be a better time, like you said, to share something, or maybe just to keep my mouth shut if you're not asking for it. So that's what I'm trying to learn.
There's going to be, women libbers out there that thinks I, beat you with a whip. That's not the case. I value her opinion and her input. But she mentioned this earlier. I don't put everything on her. Mm-hmm. She doesn't always know the whole picture. And for pastors or for preachers, or if you're in ministry, men, not that we're trying to keep stuff from our wives, but there's some things they can't handle. And I had to learn. Years ago, there was a preacher that was running me down. And that was before we got married. And so I told her all about this. And a year or so goes by, and me and this preacher kind of reconciled, got right with each other, and we were preaching meetings together. But you know who never got a blessing out of that preacher? This lady right here. Because she loves me. more than she loves anybody, and the person she loves the most was greatly hurt by that person. And so I learned a lesson there that everything, my wife's not built to bear everything that I'm built to bear. So I want her opinion, I want her input, but a lot of times she doesn't get to see the whole story or the whole picture because I don't think she can handle the whole thing.
Want to.
And she doesn't want to. It's not her job. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, if I can't do anything to be a part of the problem being solved, if it's not necessary for me to know about it, I'm good.
Yep, helps her sleep better at night.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. If I could go back 1 year, and this is for me now, if I could go back in time 1 year ago, what would my advice give yourself going into pastoring? This is what I tell myself. And I got to walk in, listen, hear me, young preachers, and I'm still a young preacher. I'll be 37 this Friday, still a young preacher. I was able to walk into a very special situation. Okay, I youth pastored and basically was my dad's assistant here for 3 years. My family, I've still got family here. There's at least 2 women in this church that changed me when I was a baby. Okay, at least 2 women. It's my hometown. I've preached revivals here through the years. My dad pastored here. I got to come in and go a little faster than I would probably recommend every young man going in taking a church to go. Okay, but at the same time, this is what I wrote down for this question. The people are with you. Don't be afraid to put the hammer down. The people are with you. Don't be afraid to put the hammer down. There's probably some things I would have dealt with or implemented. Let me say this: implemented quicker. Looking back, the people were really with us. I believe from the very beginning, 100% vote. They were ready to put the hammer down, and out of caution, I kind of held back on some things, and not necessarily changing things or taking away things, but adding things, getting to work faster on some issues. So that would be my answer on that. Before I go to this last question, my sister, Miss Amanda Weathers, she's my favorite sister. She's my only sister. She is my piano player. Her husband is our deacon. They are a great blessing. And they, Miss Amanda asked, what is it like, or is it, how she phrase it? Pastoring your family. And it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. No, I'm just kidding. So my sister and her family, she's got 4 boys and 2 girls. And one of the girls is about to get married, so that branches the family out even more. We'll be gaining a Matthew. My grandparents go here, and then I have a lady that is basically my adopted aunt and her family that go here. Am I missing anybody? I don't want to miss anybody. I think that's all.
Did you say Nan and Grandpa?
I did. My grandparents. And then like my brother and his family, they come quite a bit. I'm not their pastor, but it is absolutely a joy because
they're all doing right.
They're all going in. Yeah, that's exactly right. They're going the right direction. And so if it was, it would be difficult if it wasn't that. And they're with me. Again, they're with me. They're Chad and Amanda are really my right arm. Really, I'd say that they, from the very beginning, they saw my vision. They caught the vision that we had, and they just ran with it. And I'm very thankful for him as a deacon, and their Sunday school teachers, and all of this. One of the difficulties, and I was very plain about this when I took the church. When I first took the church, my sister played the piano, I played the guitar, our kids played instruments, but there was really nobody else in the church that sang or played the guitar or the piano or anything. And I made it very clear from the very beginning that I didn't want our family just to be up there doing all the singing. I think a lot of times pastors will have talented families and they put their family up all the time. Not that we shouldn't use our family. Me and her still sing, but I don't think we sang at all yesterday at church. I think our daughter sang, but it's been several weeks. But we had 3 other families that got up and sang. And I don't want my family to be doing all of the platform stuff. And I think that's something that pastors will be honest with a lot of family in their church. that can be a difficulty. Do you have anything on that?
Um, I just said that they were doing right, so that makes it a joy. I think if they were living wicked, it would be really tough.
Having to church them all the time.
Yeah, that would be hard.
You watch out, Amanda.
That's your family, or telling your grandmother, putting her on church discipline, that would be hard.
I know stories. Not our stories, but I know other people's stories. All right, last question. And I'm gonna give this to you first. I believe this was Miss Kim again. Are there any good, hilarious, mildly embarrassing stories yet?
Do you have one?
Oh, I do, but
Okay.
I want you to go first.
I have two.
Go ahead.
So, so we're collecting donations for the Who Will Go camp, and for the month of January, I had that we were going to take up toilet paper.
And we did.
We did. We got a lot of good toilet paper. So, we've been working behind the scenes with different people at Who Will Go, and I had only received a menu from one of the teams, and the only non-perishable food item was refried beans. So, we're taking that up in February. So, he announces it
Yesterday morning to a house full of people.
Just
I said, I want to thank everybody for the toilet paper that you brought in last month, and this month we need refried beans. And she didn't catch it.
I didn't.
She didn't catch it at all.
It's a non-perishable. We need it,
So toilet paper tied with refried beans. So
and everybody laughed, and they said at least we collected it in the right order. So that was pretty gross. And then the most embarrassing thing that happened to me was you and I were singing one day. This was months ago.
This is hilarious.
This
is the aftermath. This is hilarious.
Yes, right after we came, I think it was probably March. We were singing a song, and I was singing the lead on it, and just totally forgot the words. And I look at you to try to help me out, and you're like, hey, and you're trying to feed me, and I'm like, and so you're just like, well, she forgot. And you hung up, your guitar, and I walk of shame down. And
this is the best part.
I get there to the seat, and my little girl, 9 years old, she says, "Wow, Mom, that has really got to be embarrassing." I'm like, yeah, it was.
So I'm hard to embarrass. Like, I said that toilet paper and refried beans things from the pulpit yesterday, and it didn't bother me, but I knew it probably, once everybody started laughing, it got to her. It was like, oh my goodness. But I get embarrassed for other people, and I've had 3 different people that I have baptized this year that I thought was, or last year, that I thought was going to drown. Okay, like I go through, hold my arm here, I'm going to hold your nose, bend your knees a little bit, and then I look down, and there's this look of fear on their face as I have them under the water, and they just forget everything I've told them, and they let go of their legs, and they're basically flopping around in there. And I'm like, ah! And I'm trying to get them back up, and they're not helping. They're grabbing. And so that I feel so embarrassed. And it hadn't just been one person. It's been multiple people. And then this is Brother TJ. This is for you, Brother TJ. Brother TJ, when I baptize him, he's taller than me.
Yeah.
I baptize him, I go, and before we go down, he jumps and basically cannonballs backwards into the baptism pool. So that was I don't know if that was embarrassing, but it was hilarious, and I can't think of any more. I just enjoy it. Look, y'all, you're gonna find a better preacher than me. You're gonna find a better fellow than me. You're gonna find anybody that has a better time in life than I do. I just love life, so every day's fun. Everything's hilarious to me. So, yeah, I have to actually calm it down a little bit when I'm in the pulpit. She gets on me. I'll be right in the middle of a message on hell, and then I'll make
and you're just in it, and you're like, oh man, this is terrible.
And then I'll make some kind of joke, not meaning to. It's just my personality. I not who's there, but just I'll just say something funny, and she's over there this. Anyways, so I have to kind of tone it down a little bit. But It has been wonderful, and we've already had, yesterday was a great day, serving Jesus, visitors in both services. And listen, I want to challenge people, and we don't know everything. That we're not here trying to give a bunch of advice. That's not our goal in this. But put the hammer down. People are looking for more, and I think putting the hammer down, and this is what I put on myself. I want to live the kind of life. I want our family, our life, our marriage, our home, our ministry. I want to live the kind of life that people expect the foreign missionary to live. Yeah. He needs to be, he needs to put out his letter every quarter, and he needs to be telling us about people he's witnessing to and churches he's planting and people he's training. Why is that just for the foreign missionary? Why do American pastors get out of that? And I want to live under the expectation of if that makes sense. Because somewhere I'm a foreign missionary, right? And so I want to live under that expectation here. And I challenge you to start doing the same, sir and ma'am, living under that expectation to just put the hammer down and do something for Jesus. We don't have very long, and people want you. People want to get behind somebody that's doing something. And I hate to just tell the hard truth, but if you're somewhere where they don't want to go forward, go find a biblical church or go start one and go forward. And that's my advice for today. So I hope y'all have enjoyed this. Again, like, subscribe, and share. And we appreciate your support. We appreciate your prayers, your love for our family. And we hope that the podcast is a blessing to you, that it's ministering to you. We're trying to cover all different types of topics and things like that. And I was actually emailed this week, having gotten to serve as a youth pastor years ago. A young preacher, a young youth pastor, wanting us to do a video about tips for youth pastors. So that's something that's going to be in the works. And so if you have any recommendations of topics you'd like for us to cover or themes, email us. Go to the Hewett Family blog.com, or you can email me at pastorhewittrrbc@gmail.com, and we would love to get your topics out here. So God bless you. I hope you have a good day. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate you.